Hello, everyone. First of all, I would like to say thank you to our program chairman and the committee for allowing me to present my paper virtually. Actually, I tried to join the meeting in person. However, due to some difficult situation in my home country, especially renewing my passport for international travel, of course, it's due to the political situation right now. So it's a difficult time for me to come over there. Hope that everyone kindly understand the situation. Yes, the title of my paper, it reads, as it might appear in problem sheet, a Brahmin version of John chapter 1, verses 1 to 5, and subtitle, a biblical response to Brahmin such of Dara in its old form, but in new form, Haya, or truth in its simplest meaning. Yes, it is a kind of contextual reading of the Johannine concept of logos, as we can see in John chapter 1, verses 1 to 5, in Brahmin context. Yes, Johannine logos concept in reference to John chapter 1, verses 1 to 5. It is one of the most hotly debated subjects. It was also likely difficult for Adoniram Judson, the first American Baptist missionary to Burma, who translated the Bible into Burmese from the original tongues. It seems that he has difficult time to translate this particular word in his translation work. However, this paper finds another option to connect this missing piece of the two different worlds, the Johannine world and the Brahmin Buddhist world. Namely, the Brahmin concept of Ra or Haya is the proposal here. In its composition, the fourth gospel, it finds the Greek word logos. It best matched for the gospel to present it to the growing Hellenistic-speaking audience. In the same way, this paper believes that this Daya concept might be a better choice, if not the best. Better choice to connect a Brahmin mind to the Johannine concept of logos more effectively. For the purpose of this paper, I'll explain first who and what are the Brahmins or Burmese people for this paper purpose, and then I'll go for how the word Haya, Ra, it was employed and used in the Brahmin concept. And then we'll go back to the Bible, Johannine concept of logos in the context of John chapter 1, verse 1. Then Brahmin reading of John chapter 1, verses 1 to 5 will follow after. As for introduction, let me explain and have some words on the Brahmins, who and what they are. Myanmar, formerly known as British Burma, it is a modern state comprised of various ethno-linguistic people groups with different social cultural backgrounds. However, the Brahmins or Burmese people, they make up almost 60% of the population. They eventually became the dominant people group when the British left the country in 1948 due to their population majority. Moreover, as the confessed religious tradition of the Brahmins, Theravada Buddhism is a more conservative stream of Buddhist thought in comparing to its counterpart known as Mahayana Buddhism of China. This religion also became the dominant religious force in the new Burma, later changed to Myanmar. For the Burmans to adopt Buddhist tradition, which is in its real sense an Indian origin with a Hinduistic cultural influence. It was a long story, of course. Even before the Theravada mission's arrival, the early existence of the so-called Arichi or Ajiji, a primitive form of Buddhism, it is said to have already been in practice for generations. However, if to trace the particular growth story of this Theravada mission, the rise of the pagan dynasty would be the starting point. Several royal decrees of the time that had precisely dated when Theravada Buddhism was declared the state religion. It's been almost a millennium by now. During these long years, Buddhism proved itself to be the dominant religion in the history of the Burman ups and downs. It was up until it took a major role in the Burman nationalists' attempts for independence from British rule. Therefore, Buddhism, it has finally earned public recognition as the only master teacher for the modern Burman society that shaped and molded how Burmans should think, see, eat, and even live and survive. Accordingly, in terms of social cultural practices, Buddhism, it is sometimes complicated to identify, which is pure Buddhist teaching, and which is a Burman native one in terms of religious cultural practices. Yes, religious syncretism, it has undoubtedly taken place deep in the Burman social, cultural, and philosophical expressions. Reverend Adoniram Judson likely later noticed it, this syncretism, religious syncretism, after the unsuccessful 5 long years of his missionary work in Burma. Therefore, he then changed some of his evangelistic strategies. For instance, changing his sitting posture during a public discussion, locating himself mostly around pagodas and shrines for meeting people, adopting some pure Burman words, and even inventing new and simple words to clarify his causes to ordinary citizens and a few others. However, this paper is not about, of course, the whole contextual issue as such. It is purely a simple attempt to relate the Burman such of Dara or Daya to what the Gospel of John has presented to us in its opening chapter. To this presenter, the concept of Dara, Daya is a Burman native expression that its etymological usage was later developed under the philosophical influence of Theravada Buddhist thought as the way modern use of the word it would indicate today. Besides, this Dara or Daya notion might be a better option, if not the best, for presenting the Johannine concept of the eternal Logos through a Burman mind. Now let's go for exploring the use of Dara, Daya in the Burman concept. Use of Dara in the Burman concept. The use of the word Dara or Daya is very extensive in Burman society. It covers everything from daily caress to the most sacred truth, from political expression to many social connotations, from judicial addresses to natural laws. For a closer look, the term Daya, it is a standalone word where it can still be suffixed to an expression and prefixed to some. Further, adding it to some particular word, either as a prefix or suffix, it can signify the meaning as a special message and even as a sacred truth. For instance, to say Death. In Burmese, it is the jin. However, when suffixed thara or taya, it would then be translated as truth of death, doctrine of death, or even discourse regarding death. In this sense, thara, taya would have a similar connotation with the said Hellenistic logos concept. For example, we add logos to biblos and it becomes bibliology, bibliologia, doctrine of the Bible. However, suppose we fixed the word to a common address like Sarah or Saya, similar root to English word Sa or Sare, meaning teacher or master. Then the word would sound a sacred or religious tone to mean religious teacher or preacher if you add the word Tara, Taya. I've categorized at least there are 2-3 major ways the word Tara or Taya was employed in Burman society. First, the word Taya, we can see this in the expression of logical concept, whether secular or sacred, when a logical concept has to be presented. The word Tara or Taya is mostly suffixed. For instance, as said earlier, if Tara or Taya is suffixed to a natural expression of death, the word would then sound a logical discourse on the subject of death. Similarly, if suffixed the word to other words like prosperity, it would then mean particular teaching on prosperity, and it would mean more than the prosperity itself. Further, when saying the word liberation, that's the preferred Buddhist terminology for salvation, we suffix the taya to this word, then the word be a reference to the doctrine of liberation or doctrine of salvation for Christian theology, soteriology. There is more to mention here. Indeed, it is the first instance where the Burman Tara or Taya signifies itself a little comparable even to the literal meaning of the Hebrew word Torah, Torah, meaning instruction or teaching. As a second category, Torah, Taya, as the natural law in Burman concept. The use of the word Torah or Taya to express natural law that even concerns cosmic laws is another Burman way of usage. With its total silence of creation myths, it might be another evidence of how Buddhism has largely influenced the Burman way of life and thinking. Of the 4 major world religions, Buddhism, it is the only silent religion on major issues like creation myths and the concept of the supreme being to separate itself away from its Hinduistic root. Therefore, instead of such a creation story, Burman Buddhists would tend to claim the existence of Ra or Taya in terms of natural law. Furthermore, they would contend for no Almighty, but Ra or Taya, or natural law instead. No supreme being except Ra, Taya, to which even the gods also have to submit. Because of these, probably, the last word of Buddha to his beloved disciple Ananda eventually becomes the most quoted expression in the Burman society, community, especially when bereaved families are mourning for their loss. Others would say that even the gods could not overcome this law, natural law, the natural law of death, Daya, as the most words of comfort. The word literally would say, nothing can remain eternally. Something that is born become conditioned by the karma destined to perish. Then, Tara or Taya, in reference to intuitive knowledge of truth and truth itself. The use of Tara or Taya in expressing exceptional experience or even intuitive knowledge is also evident, especially among a more religious conscious group. For instance, they would say, Taya Yade or Taya Duide, to mean that they are revealed, illumined, or convinced, enlightened. Further, it may even mean getting a new insight if it concerns spiritual truths. Further, as stated earlier, Dara, Taya is also another typical usage to encourage bereaved families for their loss. They would say, Tayane Pi, meaning be comforted or consoled by knowing that it is a Taya, Dara, or natural truth. However, to the highest etymological employment of Dara or Taya, Taya Sha would be the most favorite expression for a Burman Buddhist devote. It means a search for truth, the truth that is related to the existence of life and knowledge of self. Finding the truth is therefore called Taya Dui, finding or discovering the truth, referring to the said intuitive knowledge of such a truth. Under Buddhistic mystical influence, such a personal experience of coming to a new insight or knowledge of truth, it is of course a prime purpose of a devout Buddhist. On the one hand, they believe such a Taya Dui experience, finding Taya, finding truth, finding Taya Dui experience would liberate the truth finder or the enlightened one himself or herself. As the fourth category, Dara or Taya, we can see in reference to the moral law and rule in Burman concept. The Burman use of Dara or Taya is also prevalent in reference to the moral law. For instance, if to say, Taya the Pin, you, Taya the Pin, you, it means to do things right morally. Therefore, to do something lawfully, the word Dara, Taya is inevitably employed in an adverbial construct, like when saying lawfully in English. In this sense, the term is a moral language also. Accordingly, Burman's use of the word Taya, Tra, is extensive, and it concerns from birth to death, from temporal experience to permanent liberation, from personal affairs to social interests. It means a logical concept and also means a particular law. At the same time, it is still a reference to personal experience of particular truth and truth itself that governs even one's existence. In this sense, this paper doubts that Burman, Dara, or Taya in its origin might probably imply more than a Hellenistic concept of logos. It even looks like it bearing a very similar etymological concept with the Hebraic concept of Torah also, in the sense that Torah is later called the law. Either or not, it is but evident that the search for Torah, Taya, is an unending Burman quest. Regarding John 9 concept of logos in John chapter 1 verse 1, there's a big debate between its origination, Hebraic origin or Hellenistic origin. We will not involve in this debate. However, here is the statement of this paper. The concept must be Hebraic origin, as the word itself is a Hellenistic word, later employed by writers such as Josephus and translators of LXX, and that was later employed by John and become Johannine word. So that in this cultural context plus biblical context, here is Berman reading of John chapter 1, verses 1 to 5 as the proposal of this paper. Yes, when Judson, Adoniram Judson, came across this very passage in his translation process, he likely found some difficulty connecting Johannine logos to any Brahmin concept. Because of this, without a doubt, he later invented a new word for his Brahmin audience to introduce this biblical truth. Actually, the word he invented is pure Burmese, but it was never used that way before. It is a very uncommon usage. It says no kapato instead of using taya, the existing concept. He invented a new word by combining simple Burmese word, saying no kapato. As mentioned, no kapato, it is a combination of pure Burmese words, but not a normal usage it is. No kapato might mean a word proceeding out from the mouth of a magistrate or simply a royal oral utterance, especially when do is suffixed in classical Burmese script. It signifies the dignitary or venerable monks or even magisterial person speak. Therefore, no kapato in Judson's translation refers to God as the one who speaks here. This translated word has become a standard usage for Burmese-speaking Christians since then. However, the problem is when gospel presenters, when the gospel presenters introduce the gospel in this new invented word, no kapato, difficulty arises. As new audience who never have any prior contact with Christianity, they don't simply understand the word, even though it's a Burmese, purely, simply Burmese word, because it's not a normal usage. Yes, all those words are uncommon for them, and they have never heard of this kind. It is as hard to grasp its full meaning for the non-Christian audience as it is not a problem for the regular church attendees who have grown up with such usages in church division. It's in response to this dilemma, the proposal of this current paper comes in the midst. As stated, this current paper believes that the Torah or Taya would be the best window through which the Brahmins could properly see the eternal Logos that John presents in his Gospel. Johannine Logos and Brahmanta. Generally speaking, John 1 to 5, the passage is all about Christ's pre-incarnate existence as eternal Logos of God, or even heavenly Torah, if to borrow someone's terminology. Accordingly, a closer look at John 1 to 5 summarizes Christ's pre-incarnate state into three major themes. There are his coexistence with God in verse 1 and 2, his crucial role in the creation of this universe in verse 3, and his eternal life-giving role in verses 4 and 5. According to John, Christ's existence as the Logos of God means his preeminence over every created thing at the basic. In other words, the Logos of God is the preeminent and supreme being. To indicate this, John borrowed a word from the opening sentence of Genesis that says, "In the beginning." This preeminent existence of eternal Logos infers here the divine sovereignty in the same measure with God the Father himself. For those who would never confess the existence of God as the supreme being like what the Brahmin Buddhist devotees do, the existence of Torah, Taya, is but a different story. The existence of Torah, Taya, is the only truth that they can always trust and rely upon. It is the very point where Christ's preeminent existence can be appropriately introduced by presenting Johannine logos in their own word, Taya, Tara, which is a preeminent truth for the Brahmin mind. In verse 3, John introduces the incarnate stage of Christ as the divine agency in creation. It can be taken as a thematic summary of Genesis 1, of course, which mentioned that God created everything by sending His word. Even though Brahmin Buddhists would not acknowledge a creator or any creation story like this, there are still keen believers in the natural law of cause and effect that they usually call karma, daya, or karma in its original Sanskrit form, daya. However, the very weak point of this Brahmin daya is its ever silence to give who or what is responsible for this natural law to take into effect. There must be, of course, someone or at least some force behind it if to enforce or enact it as a law or taya. It is precisely what John 1:3 gives the best answer by introducing the Jewish creation story by borrowing the Hellenistic expression of logos. It also is the point where the gospel presenter can start explaining how Jesus Christ, as the very taya, exists in his pre-incarnate stage. He was already there as taya since the eternity past, as the authoritative rule and the very legislative law that enforces the law of cause and effect, daya. Further, he later became one among us to legally pay the prices of our sins, paying by himself, and cause through salvation, liberation on our behalf. In verses 4 and 5, John introduces Christ's eternal life-giving rule as is the life and the light for those who seek the true meaning of life by pursuing Taya Alim, light of truth, or to be truth enlightened like the Brahmins. It is what John presents here in his gospel. He simply says that to receive the Logos of God is true life and light. In brief, therefore, this reading means that Jesus Christ, the eternal Logos of God, is the very Dara or Taya that the Brahmins were searching for all their whole life. Indeed, Jesus Christ is the Taya or Tara who rules and governs life and its destiny. He is the Tara or Taya who is the true light of life by giving everyone hope and eternal life. He is the Tara or Taya who lawfully paid all the prices for sins on the cross. He is the Tara or Taya who gives them true inner peace by saying that they are forgiven and the heavenly places secured for them. Therefore, he is the true Tara or Taya, worth for every single Brahmin to search out all their whole life. Thank you. Thank you. Please send me your questions or any comments through my email. Thank you so much.